Recently, a patron of mine, V Allender, has requested that I review planes, trains and automobiles. It's been a while since I've done anything because just recently I slipped on some ice and I fractured both my collarbone and my humerus. I found absolutely nothing humorous about it when it happened. But yeah, that was quite painful. Still on quite a lot of medication, so I apologise right up front if during this review I maybe seem a little bit more spaced out than usual. I wanted to get to planes, trains and automobiles before the Christmas season was over because it is a Christmas film and it's taken me an awful long time to get back to, as is often the case with patron and member requests. I often get requested movies that have been on my agenda for some time to think, oh, I should revisit that at some point, but it's been years, and a case in point, this is one of them. Now, I remember watching this film with my dad and my two brothers. I think both of my brothers were there at the time we watched it, and we found it hilarious. We were in absolute stitches all the way through it. I remember me and my brothers laughing quite a lot. Now the thing is, I was like 8, 9 at the time when we watched that. I think this is like maybe one of the first videos we rented out from the video shop. So yeah, whether something's going to hold up as an adult after watching, after having memories of it like that as a kid, is a different story. So I was always curious to get back to this. Now it's a very simplistic story. It's genius in its simplicity. I think it's written and directed by John Hughes, who gave us The Breakfast Club and the very underrated Some Kind of Wonderful, which I still think is his best film, but most people kind of don't seem to mention all that much. It's like a better version of Pretty in Pink. It was never that big on Pretty in Pink, but yeah. So Planes, Trains and Automobiles, it sees this guy played by Steve Martin who just wants to get home for Christmas, well, for Thanksgiving. In America you have Thanksgiving before Christmas, but they're very, very closely linked. So it's that holiday season, Christmas, Thanksgiving, holiday season. And he's trying to get back home for Thanksgiving and everything just goes wrong. And he meets this guy played by John Candy, who is essentially from hell. He's the nicest guy you could ever meet, but he's a bumbling fool who cocks everything up and yeah, just makes this guy's life a misery, not through intention, but just because he's an inadequate wreck. And that's it. That's your film. It's like, I remember reading Screenplay by Sid Field, and he talked about the dynamics of writing, of what goes into writing a screenplay. And he talks about how within the first 10 pages, you should know exactly what your main character's goal is. Now that goal can change over the course of the film, but if you don't know within the first 10 pages of what your main character's goal is, then there's something wrong with your script. Now, in that regard, there is something very right with this script, because you know within the first scene what this guy's goal is. Okay, it's very simple. Like I say, guy wants to get home. Let's throw some obstacles in his way. And that's the film. And the humour comes out of him either succumbing to those obstacles or overcoming those obstacles. And at times knowing when he's beaten, knowing when he just has to give up and roll with the punches. Now, I don't dislike Steve Martin by any stretch of the imagination. I quite like him. But I've never found him this genius, hilarious comedian that a lot of people have. Like I've talked to a lot of stand-up comedians, or I've listened to podcasts with stand-up comedians, and Steve Martin is often named as, you know, one of the greats. And personally, I've just never got it. But I do like him as an actor, and I do think he's more than capable of pulling off both the comedy as well as the more serious, heartfelt kind of moments, which a film like this needs. And I think that the relationship that develops between, because he's essentially the straight man to John Candy's kind of bumbling buffoon, and yet he's not completely straight. He gets to elicit humour out of having to be the straight man to John Candy's buffoonery. So I recognise that there is a skill in that. There's definitely a skill in that. But just watching the relationship of these two men develop over the course of the film, it's one of those typical buddy kind of movies. They start off at loggerheads. They start off seemingly not being a right fit for each other, and then over the course of the movie, getting to know each other, getting to know their foibles, and liking each other in spite of those foibles. It's more Martin's character getting to like Candy's character despite of his foibles, because Candy's character just likes everyone. He's very amenable, and that's in many ways part of his problem, I guess. It's part of the issues that have plagued him in life. But over the course of the film, this guy's story comes out. You start to realise why maybe he is the way that he is, and that he was a married man who, like many married men, function when they're married, function when their other half is around to do the parts of life for them that they are unable to. I've given a spoiler there. I do apologise for anyone who's not seen it, but it's not like we're not talking like a Christopher Nolan film here. It's a nice, fluffy kind of character-driven piece that's like, it's there mainly for the giggles. I would say that sometimes it suffers from what a lot of John Hughes films suffer from, which is that real broad humour. I think John Hughes can be very funny. I think he can offer like situational comedy type stuff that is very funny. But I think he has a tendency to go so broad that it takes me out of any kind of reality that the film is trying to set up. You think Home Alone. Home Alone's it's actually the first one at any rate. It's a good film. It's quite character driven. It's quite emotionally heartfelt. But once you do get to the funny pratfalls of these two guys getting hit in the face with irons and things like that, it stretches credibility to the point where you're like, no, those guys are dead. They're dead. And there are moments like that here where just the comedy just like, it's too nod, wink, wink. And it's too like pantomime-esque and theatrical. And that's not my kind of comedy, really. I'm not your Three Stooges kind of guy. But when the stuff is more kind of character-based, when it's, Martin's character getting irritated with Candy's character kind of clearing his throat, or his bedtime routine and things like that, that's kind of stuff I find really funny, because it's more relatable, it's more believable. But yeah, it is a film that holds up. So back when I saw this as a kid, I think the more broad humour type of stuff that's in it was probably the stuff that I was belly laughing at as a kid. As an adult, not so much. But as an adult, the film still has a lot to offer in regards to just seeing these two guys get to know each other, bond, and then have a really heartfelt ending, which really kind of gets to the heart and meaning of Thanksgiving, and you know, the spirit of giving, and over that holiday season, and for that reason I come away from the film feeling better than I did before I went into it. Yeah, it's a good film. I recommend it. If it's one that you've never seen, definitely check it out. I certainly as a kid I had great memories of it, and coming back to it as an adult, those memories haven't been tarnished. Does it hold up quite as well as I remember? No, but it's still a very respectable effort. It's still, I would say, one of John Hughes's better films. If you have seen Planes, Trains and Automobiles, if you're a fan of the film, please do comment below. Let me and V Allender know what you thought about the film. Thank you, Mr. Allender, once again for asking me to review this. Thank you for being a patron. Thank you for your support. It is greatly appreciated, more than you'll know. And for anyone else out there who would like to know what being a patron or being a member is all about, if you'd like to find out about becoming a member of my channel on YouTube, just hit the join button, which is just down below this video, or visit my Patreon page. There is a link to that just down below as well, and you can become a Patreon to find out how you can support this channel and what you get in return for that support, other than my undying love. But yeah, thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.